What lives under the bed? I didn't think much of it when Max started complaining about the thing under his bed. Kids get scared. Shadows turn into monsters, and the mind, left alone in the dark, creates horrors out of silence. It was normal. At least, that's what I told myself the first night he ran into our bedroom, his little body trembling, his face streaked with sweat and tears. He clung to me, babbling through shaky breaths about something that grabbed his ankle. I carried him back, tucked him in, checked under the bed, and found nothing but stray socks and a toy car missing a wheel. The second night was worse. He screamed this time, a raw, gut-wrenching sound that tore me from sleep like a knife through my chest. I sprinted down the hall, nearly slipping on the hardwood as I barged into his room. He was huddled in the corner, knees to his chest, eyes wide, darting toward the bed frame. "It touched me," he whispered. "It touched me, Daddy." His voice cracked. I flicked on the light, dropped to my knees, and yanked up the dust ruffle, half expecting to see a raccoon or, at worst, some twisted fragment of my own childhood fears staring back. But again, nothing. I ran my hand along the cold floorboards. Max refused to sleep in his bed after that. He begged to stay with us, and after 3 nights of fighting his fear with logic, I caved. Maybe a week of comfort would settle him. Maybe I was handling this all wrong. But then, the nightmares started. I woke up to Max thrashing beside me, his legs kicking against the mattress, hands clenching at the sheets. He whimpered in his sleep, face contorted in terror. When I shook him awake, he gasped so hard his whole body shuddered. "He wants me to come under," he mumbled against my chest. "Who?" I asked, smoothing down his damp curls. "The other Max." A chill crawled up my spine. "What do you mean?" "The boy under the bed," he murmured, already slipping back into unconsciousness. I didn't sleep after that. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my arm draped protectively over my son's small frame. Every tiny creak of the house, every distant groan of the settling wood, made my skin crawl. The logical part of my mind knew it was nonsense, a child's nightmare, a product of stress, maybe something he picked up at school. But the other part, the primal, ancient part buried in all of us, felt something else. A presence. A weight pressing down, unseen but undeniably there. By the end of the week, I was running on fumes, snapping at my wife, barely able to function at work. I decided enough was enough. I had to show Max, definitively, that nothing was under his bed. Maybe if he saw me check again, with the lights on, with every possibility examined, he'd be able to let it go. I waited until he was drowsy, curled up with his stuffed dog, eyelids fluttering in exhaustion. Then, without a word, I sat on the floor beside his bed and lifted the dust ruffle. And there he was. A boy. Curled up, knees to his chest, staring at me with wide, terrified eyes. My breath caught in my throat, my mind scrambled to make sense of it. Had Max crawled under the bed while I wasn't looking? But no, Max was behind me, his slow, steady breathing warm against my arm. I looked back under. The boy's lips trembled. His hands clenched into fists, fingernails digging into his skin. Then, in the smallest, weakest whisper, he said, "The one on the bed isn't me." My entire body went cold. Behind me, Max exhaled in his sleep. I turned my head just enough to see his small form rising and falling, his back to me, peaceful, unaware. My heart slammed against my ribs. Slowly, so slowly, I looked back under the bed. The boy was gone. Nothing remained but darkness. It was sometime past midnight when I heard it again, the slow, deliberate creak of the bed springs, the whisper of fabric shifting, the unmistakable sensation of something grazing my ankle. A child's touch, soft, hesitant, fingers just barely brushing against my skin before retreating into the darkness beneath the bed. My son, Michael, whimpered, curling into himself under the covers, his breath shallow and uneven. I exhaled sharply, rubbing my temples. "Buddy, it's just your imagination," I muttered, more to myself than to him. It was the same routine every night for the past week, Michael waking up in terror, swearing that something reached for him from under the bed. I had checked countless times. There was nothing but dust and old toys gathering in the dim space beneath. But the fear in his eyes was real, raw, infectious. "Please, Dad," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Check again." I sighed, swinging my legs off the bed and kneeling down. The floor was cool against my palms as I braced myself, then leaned forward, lifting the bed skirt. The darkness under the bed swallowed the light from Michael's night lamp, revealing little but shadowed emptiness. I hesitated, my breath catching in my throat. Then I saw them, eyes. Wide, glassy, unblinking. A pair of them, staring at me from the far corner, reflecting the dim glow from the room. My stomach lurched violently. And then it spoke. A whisper, hoarse and urgent, slithered through the air, barely audible over the sound of my own pounding heartbeat. "Dad, the one in the bed isn't me." The world tilted. My limbs locked in place, my pulse hammering in my ears. I forced myself to look up, at the bed, at Michael, at the small, shaking form curled under the blankets. His face was pale, eyes swollen from crying, his lips trembling. No. No, this wasn't possible. This was him. I had put him to bed. I had kissed him goodnight. But the boy under the bed, the one with my son's voice, with my son's terrified, pleading expression, he was also Michael. I staggered back, nearly falling. My vision swam, bile rising in my throat. "Michael," I choked out, my voice foreign to my own ears. What? The boy under the bed began to cry. Softly at first, then harder, his small body shuddering with each silent sob. "Please," he whimpered, reaching toward me. "Please, Daddy, you have to believe me. He's not me." My legs felt numb. My fingers twitched, grasping at nothing. I turned back to the bed, to the Michael lying on top, watching me with wide, tearful eyes. He didn't move. He didn't say a word. I couldn't breathe. Something in my mind screamed at me to run, to wake my wife, to do something. But I couldn't. My body refused to obey. Because in that moment, as I knelt between them, staring at two versions of my son, a horrifying realization settled into my bones. One of them was lying. And I had no idea which one. A thick silence filled the room, heavy as stone. My breath came in shallow gasps, my hands gripping the edge of the mattress as I forced myself to look from one Michael to the other. The one under the bed, his face was streaked with tears, his fingers trembling as he reached toward me. The one on the bed, rigid, still, watching me with wide, glistening eyes. Neither spoke. Neither moved. A sick, twisting dread coiled in my stomach. I swallowed hard. My body screamed at me to get up, to walk out of the room and pretend none of this was happening. But I couldn't. "Michael." My voice barely escaped my throat. "Which one of you?" I couldn't even finish the question. The Michael on the bed whimpered. He squeezed his eyes shut and pressed his face into the pillow. "Daddy, please," he whispered. "Don't listen to him. It's a trick." The Michael under the bed shook his head violently. "No. He's the trick." His voice cracked, desperate. "He's not me. Dad, please, I don't know what's happening, but you have to get me out of here." I clenched my teeth. This wasn't real. It couldn't be real. This was some kind of nightmare, the kind that coils around your brain and tricks you into believing it's real. Any second now, I would wake up. I had to. But then, as if sensing my hesitation, the boy on the bed, Michael, tilted his head ever so slightly. Just enough for the moonlight to catch in his eyes. Something about them made my blood run cold. They were too bright. Too sharp. His pupils, too large. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I noticed something else: he wasn't blinking. Not once. My skin prickled with an instinctive revulsion, something primal whispering inside me that the thing sitting on my son's bed was not my child. The thing on the bed stirred. It sat up straighter, the slow creak of the mattress sounding deafening in the quiet. "Dad," it murmured, and my stomach lurched at how unnatural the voice suddenly sounded, stretched, wrong, like someone struggling to mimic a child's voice and failing. I scrambled backward. My elbow slammed into the nightstand, knocking over a lamp. The bulb flickered wildly as the lamp rolled onto the carpet, casting long, jumping shadows along the walls. The Michael under the bed flinched, his breath coming in sharp, panicked gasps. "Run," he sobbed. "Dad, get out of here. It knows." And that was when the other one moved. Not like a person. Not like a child. It moved in a slow, unnatural ripple, its joints bending in ways that weren't right. It slid off the bed, not climbed, slid, like a thing shedding its human shape. I didn't think. I lunged forward and grabbed the real Michael, the one under the bed, by the wrist. His skin was ice cold, his whole body shaking as I yanked him out. Behind me, something let out a low, clicking sound, like bones grinding against each other. "Don't turn around," Michael whispered, clutching onto me. "Please, just run." I did. I hoisted him into my arms and bolted out of the room, kicking the door shut behind me. My heart hammered against my ribs as I staggered down the hall, nearly tripping in my panic. I heard a sound from behind the door, a quiet, scraping noise, like nails dragging against wood. Then, a voice. Soft. Gentle. Sickeningly sweet. "Dad, you picked the wrong one." My heart was pounding so loudly that I barely heard the buzz of my phone in my pocket. I bolted down the stairs, not looking back, not thinking. Michael trembled in my arms, his fingers gripping my shirt so tightly it felt like he was afraid I would let him go. I stumbled into the living room, slamming my shoulder against the doorframe, and only then did I allow myself to take a breath. My lungs burned, my legs shook, and my mind felt hollow, emptied of everything except the raw, overwhelming instinct to protect my son. "Dad," Michael whispered. I looked at him. He was here, in my arms. His hair was damp with sweat, his cheeks wet with tears. His eyes, the same ones I had seen since the day he was born, stared at me with fear and desperate hope. It was him. It had to be him. My phone buzzed again, snapping me from my thoughts. I hesitated before pulling it from my pocket. An unknown number. Without thinking, I answered. "Hello?" The other end was silent, except for the sound of breathing. Slow. Heavy. "Hello? Who is this?" And then the voice. The same voice I had just heard upstairs. "Dad, you chose wrong." A paralyzing chill shot through me. My stomach clenched, and for a moment, I forgot how to breathe. My grip tightened around Michael as my phone slipped from my fingers, hitting the wooden floor with a dull thud. He whimpered, burying his face in my chest. I wanted to say something, anything, but at that moment, a sound came from upstairs. A door creaked open. And then, footsteps. Slow. Measured. Coming down the stairs. Nails scraped against the wall. I sucked in a sharp breath and did the only thing my instincts allowed. I held Michael tighter and stepped back, edging toward the front door. The stairs groaned under the weight of something descending. One step. Then another. Closer. And then, silence. I froze, every muscle in my body locked in place. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst. Something was waiting in the dark hallway. And then the voice came again. Calm. Gentle. "Dad, why aren't you happy?" I came back.